What's up, guys? Roland here. This week on 3D NerdStop, we're going to do some maintenance on our printer. Alright guys, here we are, we're at our printer. Now, one of the reasons why I want to do maintenance on my printer this week is, if you can notice, right here I printed a brim on the outside of just a big square. And as you can see, when it lays it down, the auto leveling is not working real well. As you can see over here, it's not putting down a nice layer on the first one. It's thicker over here than it is back here. It gets thinner. It's thinner over here. It doesn't stick sometimes over here. This gets a little loose because it doesn't push it into the build plate enough. Because for some reason the bed's not leveling properly. And part of that is because I do use hairspray when I treat my build plate. So because I use hairspray, no matter how well you protect the inside, it gets a cloud of hairspray around here. So over time, things start sticking. Now what I mean by that is, I'll actually show you here. Let me turn on the printer real quick. Oops. Let me turn on the printer here real quick. Start with, I don't know if you can really hear that, but that's the fan here on the extruder. That's because it's kind of got gunked up a little bit, so it makes a lot of noise now. One of the other things here, alright, I'm heating up the printer real quick so I can tell it to reprint this real quick. So we'll just kind of pick this off here real quick, just a little bit. We're not actually going to let it run all the way through. We will stop it. But I want to try and show you what's been happening here. So give me just a minute to get it warmed up. See, once the fan gets warmed up a little bit, I can tap it and I can make it stop making noise, which tells me it just needs to be cleaned up a little bit. We can maybe get rid of that noise at startup. We may not. That fan may just make noise. But our biggest worry is this right here, how it's smashing so hard into the build plate here, it can't even extrude plastic. That's not good. So we got to figure out why. I mean, all of our magnets are in place. Yep, everything looks good underneath. Everything's sitting where it's supposed to be. So now that we've got her just about heated up, we'll tell it to print from the SD card. So now it'll heat up here. And what we want to watch is, we actually want to watch this side right here when it goes to do this auto bed leveling and stuff. So watch this side right here. See how it's not smooth? See, you got hung up there? That means this piece is getting stuck and it's not moving properly. See how it's stuck again? Now it fell down. Because it's doing that means it's not reading properly. The sensor isn't going to be working properly. So that's what we need to kind of clean up. So that's what we're going to attempt to clean up. We're going to try and fix that problem and see if we can't just clean everything else up. Give it some good oil and lube and try and fix it all up real quick. Okay guys, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take the spool off the top of it. So I'm just going to cut the line, cut the filament there. Take our spool off. Take our spool holder off. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take the top off. So I'll go ahead and move my screen out of the way and turn this to the side and get to it. And then get our screwdriver here. I think this one will work. Yep. And undo these screws. So screws real quick, because we need to be able to get inside this. Set your screws off to the side in a safe place. I'll actually set this back up here first, just a second. Spin this the other way. Spin it this way. Filament out of my way here. Undo this side. Alright, so we got our 4 screws out now. We're going to unplug the power, because we don't need power. Turn off our power supply. Alright. Just back around here. Alright, now I'm going to undo my screen real quick, because I don't need it in the way. So we can just get the LCD, smart LCD out of the way real quick, because it doesn't need to be in the way right now. And now we should be able to take our top off. There we go. Oops, my foot's moved. Yeah, that's right, that zip tie up here. So we have a zip tie holding the wire in place up here at the top. We have to remember to get it out of the way. So let's see here. Oops. Go. So now we can just take the top and set it off to the side. Alright, now we got her open. We can take a look and see. We can't figure out what's going on here. Alright. Well, what it is this is getting stuck over here, and I bet you this one's starting to get a little stuck over here too. So what we would do... Okay guys, so the first thing we're going to do is we have our limit switches here. Now I recommend before you ever take anything apart, you always take a picture of how everything is. And of course, me recording this, I have a picture now of how everything is. So I'm going to undo these. You don't want to pull on the wire, you want to pull on the plug itself. They come off real easy. So you have black and red. So that gets that out of the way. Okay, over here. You have red and black. So pull on the actual plug itself, not the wire. And then you have red and black. Okay. So that unplugs all of that. Alright guys, now I'm looking at the underside of the stepper motor. So we want to reach underneath here and very gently unplug our stepper motor. See, you have to be really careful. You just want to pull on the plug itself as much as you can, not the wires, because you don't want to pull the wires out of the plug. So that gets that out of the way. Alright, well, the next thing we need to do is we need to get these to go past the clip right here. Now we want to be careful. We don't want to break the clip. I don't know how well this is actually going to work trying to get it past it. I've never tried this before, so we're going to try it very gently. We're just going to kind of nudge the clip over and lift. Alright, we're getting past it. This might be easier with like a little screwdriver in the center. Now we need to do it on both sides. Alright, now you can see the other side. Now I'm going to do the same thing over here. Just going to gently move this clip back out of the way. And I'm going to stick this little screwdriver in here so I can get it to past it. There we go. See how now I've got that all completely up? There we go. And we're going to just get that to go past it. Now we have our entire carriage free. Alright, now we have the entire top carriage free. We can actually just lift this up and it'll actually slide right off of the rails. There we go. So we can put our whole hot end very carefully off to the side for the moment. And we can see how these pieces work now. Now one thing you can see is that this rod, let me get a little close up here for you. I don't know how well you can tell. Okay, but this rod right here you can see is really dirty. It's really kind of nasty. Now I can just spin this nut all the way up the threaded rod. You want to be careful. You don't want to yank the rods around. You don't want to bend them. You don't want to damage them. So you want to be careful doing this. Alright, just do it gently. You don't have to do it real rough. It's not real hard. Okay, we're just going to take this and spin this all the way up and off real quick. You could, if you wanted to, turn your printer on and use that to spin it up, but it's just as easy to do by hand, as you can see. Oops. There you go. Sorry about that. Now you can see I'm just twisting it off the top by hand. Okay, now I'm going to keep this on this side. I don't want to get the two sides confused. Even though, if I'm not mistaken, they are identical to each other. But we want to keep it so we don't get them confused. Alright, so this is what the piece looks like. Alright, so we're just going to set it off to the side, and then we're going to take the other side off. I mean, I'm not pushing this hard. It spins rather easily. As you can hear as it goes up, you can see how these two kind of tip towards each other a little bit, but that's okay. When you have the carriage on there, it keeps them in line. There we go. Now we have the other side off. Okay. So we'll set it off to the side. And we'll get ourselves some paper towels. And you want to be careful, but you can grab these rods at the bottom and just give them a little spin, give them a wipe down. We want to clean them up. And we're just wiping off all the old dirt and grease and hairspray. As you can see, it's pretty dirty. But that happens when you use something over time. I am being very careful not to bend the rod or push the rod in any weird direction. I'm just very carefully cleaning it. Alright guys, I plugged back in my LCD screen here real quick, and I am trying to clean these rods. I found that it is a little easier that if you go under move, access, and go to move by 1 millimeter, your Z, and then you just tell it to move forever, it'll go to negative 325. You can just kind of put the towel on here and pinch it just a little bit, you want to be careful not to push. You just want to pinch evenly on both sides, just a little bit. You don't want to try and stop it. But then, as you can see, it's working my hand down as it spins. And I'm being really careful to make sure I'm not bending the rod, I'm not pushing it or pulling it in either direction. I'm just letting it wipe itself off. And because I went that far negative, it should let me go the entire length of the rod. It should spin for a little bit. And so I do that to both rods and get both rods good and clean. Alright, once you get those rods cleaned up, your Z-axis threaded rods cleaned up a little bit, you also want to take your non-threaded rods and just gently wipe those off. Now you're not trying to get everything off of it. You mostly want to feel them to make sure they're not sticky from hairspray. If you find sticky spots, you need to put some water on your towel and wipe it off. Some of the other stuff y'all can't see here is that over the time, as you can see, you get all types of dirt and stuff inside your printer. Along here, you also get hairspray down in here. So you might want to clean all that out. Clean all those things off. Very, very carefully. Use a little bit of water on a rag, on your paper towel. Give me a little bit, and you can clean a lot of the sticky off of here too from the hairspray mist that has managed to get in here over time. So take that, clean this up a little bit. And you should always do this to your printer every once in a while. Treat your printer nice. This thing's cost you money, and if you want to keep using it, you got to maintain them. Whether you use hairspray or glue over time it will build up no matter what you do. Now, excuse me, using a glue stick, it's going to build up more on the build plate, and you're going to have to do a lot more cleaning on the build plate to get it clean than with the hairspray, especially if you clean with the hairspray every once in a while. I keep my build plate fairly clean. I always clean it with water about every 2 prints. Depending on the print. If it's 2 big prints, I do it after every big print. Small prints, I might get 2 or 3 small prints before I do it. But if they're big prints, I always do it. And of course, for any of those that are curious, I always turn my printer off when I clean my build plate. So we'll do that real quick. Because I have my printer taken apart here, I'm going to get the LCD screen out of the way. And the way I always clear mine is take my paper towels, fold it into a nice little square, and set it down in the middle of the build plate. Take a little Coke bottle full of water, and I just pour just a little bit in the center, like so, and let the paper towel absorb the water. And then I just take it and kind of smear it around. Now I always try and hold my build plate so it doesn't move around a lot. Now if there's plastic on the build plate, I always try and clean it off. And I usually do that before I put the water on it, because having plastic on the build plate doesn't help. But you can just smear it around, and you just kind of wipe it down. You want to be careful you don't push water over the edges and get it all over everything. You want to try and keep the water on the build plate. Now, it's okay, like I'm coming off the front a little bit, but that's onto the floor here. So I'm just going to do that real quick. Then I'm going to take my scraper and look for any spot where it kind of snags on it, because that means there's plastic there, and I don't want plastic there. Or there's a buildup of hairspray there. You have to kind of determine which by feel. Over time you'll learn which. And if you can hear the thunder in the background, I apologize. There is a storm starting up outside. So we're just going to try and get this cleaned off here. Now after I hit it with water real good and I've gotten a good scrape going, and I don't feel any more drags on it, and I don't see any buildup anywhere. Okay. I then get a dry, clean paper towel and fold it up the same way I did before. So this time I make it a little bit smaller of a square. See? Smaller of a square. And then I just take it from one side to the other, drag across once, flip the towel, drag across again, rotate the towel, do it again, rotate, do it again, rotate. Sometimes I'll open it up and flip it over, trying to find dry edges and corners, and just try and go over the entire thing like so, getting it clean. Then just go over it with whatever dry surface may be left on the towel and try and make sure it's dry. So now I'm just going to let that naturally dry. Now we're doing a little more in cleaning the build plate right now. Now we're trying to worry about why these keep sticking. And it's more like, why does the carriage, which is over here, keep sticking on this? And it doesn't feel sticky to me, but that doesn't mean that it isn't. So I'm going to take a little bit of my wet paper towel and I'm going to wipe in here very gently, trying not to get the switch real wet. I'm not trying to get the bolt real wet or any piece of this real wet. I'm just trying to, if there's any residual hairspray on it, I'm trying to clean it off. Okay? So that way, hopefully, it won't stick anymore. Hopefully, we can stop that from happening. And more than likely, what's happening is this switch may be sticking a little bit. And because this switch sticks a little bit, it's letting it rise up higher against this plate, which then makes it harder to come back down on top of this bolt. Alright guys, hopefully you can't hear the rain too terribly bad up there. It's actually storming outside pretty good here. So, as I was saying, this piece right here, what it does is this piece, when it's on this, actually goes around here, and this bolt actually goes inside this cutout for a bolt. And the problem is if this piece goes too far towards the top, this piece can turn a little bit and it makes it hard for it to go back inside that bolt. So one of the things we can probably do, we might have to be very careful, looks like we don't want to mess with it too much, is, actually that's probably about just the perfect depth as it is. If you look inside, I don't know if y'all can't see it, but there's a lip inside, so the bolt can only go so far in. They probably should have made that a little deeper so they could have run this further up in here and made sure that it doesn't pop below. Because what's happening is sometimes I'm guessing the switch isn't registering fast enough and it's moving too far down, so it's catching on the corners of the bolt a little bit in here. That's a suspicion. The other one is this has gotten a little tacky inside and it's actually sticking to the side of the bolt and it won't go up and down real easy. So, not knowing which, we'll just clean it all up. We'll clean up the inside of there real good. I'll make sure that's nice and clean so there's no issues with it. Some of the other things we're going to clean up while we're here working on it. But on the hot end, it kind of looks like there's spider webs all over the place. And there's not. That's just little pieces of filament that have strung themselves all over the place. So we're going to pull this fan and clean it, and we'll pull this fan and clean it. We'll make sure everything's nice and clean. We'll clean the other side as well, where the stepper motor is. We'll clean the rods here. We'll clean the rods here and get them nice and clean. And then before we put it all back together, we're going to lube everything up, because we want to make sure everything slides nice and smooth and we don't want to mess anything up. So I'm going to do all that real quick and then we'll come back and I'll show you how to put it all back together. Alright guys, Well, now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to lube the rods back up, and then we're going to put our pieces back on them and get them to go all the way down to where we want them to. Alright? So, of course, you could take the time and you could spread lube all the way up and down the rod, but you really don't have to. Lube, one thing about it is it will spread on its own. So if you get yourself a nice dollop on your finger, and then you take it and add it at the top up here, nicely, on the threads, and spread it down just a little bit all the way around. When I thread that side on, the threads should carry it down. But to help it out, we're going to spread just a little bit here and there, so as it goes down, it'll carry enough lube with it. Alright, see, I'm not worrying about getting everywhere. Just enough to have a little bit in different places. Okay, because now when I thread that rod down, it should carry all the way down. So let's set this up here where it goes, and then we'll just start spinning it down. And there we go. Now we're getting the lube to go down the rod. As you can see, I don't know, y'all can't really see it, but I had a whole bunch of lube globbed up here, and now it's all being pushed below the bolt. So it'll work its way into the threads as it goes. So we can just work it all the way down. Take the little excess down here that's looping up below it and re-spread it back on the track. There we go. Just work it. Now I'm going to actually work it all the way down, then I'm going to work it back up just a little bit, because I want it to spread the lube and clean the rod and everything the whole way down. I'm being very careful not to bend the rod, not to push the rod too hard, not to mess up the limit switch. I'm actually being really gentle with it. So, as you can see, we can get it all the way down here towards the bottom. There we go. And now we'll just spin it back up here a good ways. I don't want it too far, but I don't need it too low. And we'll put it like right about there. Okay, now I'm going to do the same to the other side and get it to the same point. Alright guys, as you can see, I now have them both on. They're now ready to go. I don't have them perfectly level with each other. They're close. They're close enough to where I can, once I get the hot end back on and the track back in place, then I can tweak it out. The other thing I need to do is I need to put a little bit of grease on the Z-axis smooth rods now. So of course we're just going to put a little bit on our finger again. And then we're just going to gently smear some on here. We don't need a lot. This stuff goes a long way and it lasts a while, if you haven't noticed. Now, I'm telling y'all how I clean and maintain my printer. Everybody does it differently. Everybody has their own way of doing it. You don't have to do it my way. This is just how I do it. You can do it however you feel comfortable doing it, or whatever makes sense to you, or you've read somewhere else. Just because I'm saying this is how I do it doesn't mean this is the only way to do it. This is just how I particularly do it, and I found when I've had these problems before doing things similar to this. Now, I haven't taken it this far apart before. I've done other things and managed to fix the problem, but this should take care of the problem I'm having. We will see if it doesn't. I have some other ideas of ways to fix it, and I will approach those when it happens. Okay, so now everything is nice and lubed up. Get my finger off here real quick. And now we are going to very carefully put our hot end carriage back on. Okay, be very careful to get our bearings lined up nicely on the smooth rods. There we go. Okay guys, now that we have that down and in place, all we need to do is very gently bend our pieces back and let our tracks fall into place. So, just bring that back and let it come in 1 notch. Bring that back, let it come down 2 notches. Bring that back and let it go down the rest of the way. Alright, all we have to do is make sure we get the rod centered once we get it to the right position, and then it'll fall right into place. As you can see, that moves nice and evenly. That one seems to move pretty good. Doesn't seem to be sticking, but we'll have to see. Alright, so now the next thing we'll do is wire it all back up real quick. So we'll just flip that back out of the way. We'll take our wires here. Now we have a little notch here on the back side. Focus. There we go. It's kind of hard to see, but there's a little notch here on the back side which tells you how this goes in the stepper motor. So if you line that up, you can then put that in your stepper motor. And then we have to wire these switches up real quick. Black, and it mirrors it on this side. Red, black. Okay, so now we've got all that hooked up. Oops, sorry guys. So now we hooked all of our wires up here and down here. Okay, we plugged in our stepper motor. We've got all this in place. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is hook up our LCD screen real quick, our smart LCD. There we go. And now we can power on the printer. And as we can hear, that little motor's still whining. There's really nothing I could do about that. Once it warms up a little bit, it'll be quiet. So what we're going to do, first thing we're going to do is we're going to test our auto home. So we're going to tell it to auto home and see if it works. If everything is good, this should work just fine. There we go. Limit switches are off on that side, not on this side, but that's okay. So now we'll come over here and we will go to, now we're going to move the Z-axis up just a little bit. Bring it back down to what it says is 0. Oops. Okay. Now what I want to do is I'm going to turn off my stepper motors. Disengage steppers. So now I have control over the head. I'll look at it. And what I can see here, let me see if I can get y'all to see it. Hang on a second. Alright guys, as you can see, it thinks it's zeroed right now. So it thinks everything is touching the build plate. But as you can see clearly there, it is not. And then over here, you can clearly see that it is touching the build plate. So what we're going to do is switch back over to the other side again real quick. Alright. And we're going to grab the threaded rod here, and we're just going to gently spin it until the nozzle just touches the build plate. And the way we can tell that it just touches, let me see if I can get this to focus for y'all, sorry. Okay, is if you watch right here, it's really hard to see, but if you watch right there, if I spin this, I can see when it starts to separate. I can take it up until it just starts to move it, then down until it just separates, and then just back up like one or two little, you'll feel clicks when you do it. Alright, now that being done, I'm going to back off again. real quick. And I'm going to tell it to auto home again. Okay. Then I'm going to go back to main. I'm going to go to prepare. I'm going to say move, access, Z, and I'm going to tell it to go up to +1, and then tell it to go to 0. So it should think that is touching the build plate now, and then I'll check it. It looks like it's touching there. Oops, got to disable the stepper motors. Disable steppers. There we go. Looks like it's touching there. Definitely touching there, so I'm just going to adjust the rod here. So it's just touching. And as you can see over here, we're still off. So I'm going to do that to it again. And if you keep going back and forth, eventually you'll get it fairly level. That looks fairly level across there. Ooh. You can tell I'm actually touching the build plate right there. That looks pretty good. Let's tell it to move up here. Oops. Prepare. Move. Z. Let's let it go up just a little bit. So we're off the build plate. There we go. And then go back in here and go auto home. And there we go. Now it should be nice and zeroed out, and we should be good to go. Sometimes you find you have to might do it 3 or 4 times. I can tell it's fairly zeroed out because I saw this switch move and I saw this switch move. So because I could see both switches move when it touched, it should be well zeroed now. But we will find out here in just a minute. So what we'll do is we will move it back up off the build plate. And then we will preheat for PLA. Alright guys, we got it all heated up real quick. So I have just enough filament in it to where I should be able to do a simple print. Now I don't have the bed treated, so I don't think it's going to stick real well, but I'm not that worried about that right now. That's not what I'm trying here. I'm going to tell it to print from the SD. I have a file in here that's just the big square that goes around. And basically I'm telling it to print it because I want to see it do the auto level. That's really what I'm looking for here, is the auto level process. I want to see that this side over here moves freely on its own and doesn't get stuck. Because if it's still getting stuck, that means what I did didn't fix the problem. Okay, seemed to do good there. Look good there. Looks good there. Looks really good there. Still looking good. Looking nice and smooth like it did when I first bought it, which is what I like. It's the way it's supposed to look. So we're actually going to let it print the first perimeter here. I don't know how good of a job it'll actually do. There we go. Now we have some coming out. It's actually looking pretty good. Let's see if it stays fairly consistent. Now, I don't expect it to stick real well. Like I said, I didn't do anything to treat the build plate here. The build plate doesn't have any hairspray on it or anything. But what I'm looking for is a fairly consistent bead laydown. So it's roughly the same thickness on both sides. It's never been 100% even on both sides. It's always been a little bit more on one side than the other, but that's okay as long as it's not massively off like it was before. And it seems to be sitting filament out nicely all the way around. Here we go. It's actually putting down the first line of the model. That was my fault. That was not the printer, that was me. I accidentally let the wires get caught and it was causing problems with it. So let's see if I messed it up too much there. See what it does on this pass. Nope, now it's printing nicely. So that was me, that was my fault. I let the cable here get caught by the build plate and it twisted the build plate. But it seems to be printing pretty good. Everything looks to be back the way it's supposed to be. It's not smashing itself into the build plate anymore. Over here on the one corner, really bad. Everything seemed to move smooth when I did the... Alright guys, as you can see after the cleanup now, our line here looks good. It's roughly the same thickness on both sides. It is a little bit more smashed in on this side than this side, but be honest with you, that's the way my printer's always been. It's always been a little bit harder into the build plate on the over here than it is over here. I don't know why. I've tried tweaking it a million different ways, and it always seems to just press a little bit harder on this side than this side. But now it's nowhere near as much as it was. Yeah, there's these little blotches right through here. That's my fault. When the cable caught back there, it made the build plate move up a little bit and smashed it. It's actually fine now. So it actually looks pretty good. It looks like it prints well now. So I'll throw the cover back on it and I'll be ready to go for my next print. Alright guys, another little trick for you here. I discovered this the last time I had the printer apart. I guess I didn't say anything about it, so I'll say something about it this time. One of the things I found that's really helpful when you're trying to put the cover back on is run the carriage up towards the top. You don't have to get it all the way up there, but if you run it towards the top, it'll pull these wires up out of your way. So they're not catching in the side of the case when you're trying to put it on. It makes it a lot more complicated. It just makes it easier if you run it up towards the top, as you can see I'm doing right now. And that should be good right about there. We'll just turn it off. I just set my motor up here so it would just run up. And as you can see, this side's almost straight over here, so that means it's nice and up and out of the way. This shouldn't be too high. Hopefully it's not. And now I can easily take my case, and when I drop it back over very carefully, the wires will stay out of the way just a little bit better than they did before. Now, one thing you need to really be careful of when you put the top back on is to make sure your rods get inside the holes in the top up here that hold your rods in place. So actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to let the carriage back down now. So I'll turn that back on. And I'll come into prepare and move 1 millimeter Z-axis and wind it down so it kind of comes out of the way. So I can get my hand up in here. There we go. That should be good. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Now I can see, or I can get my hand up in here, and I can very easily put my rods where they belong, making sure they wind up in their holes, and push down on the top. So now the top's back in its place, and I can easily put my screws in. Whatever you do, don't forget to zip tie your cables back up in the top here. If you do that, they can get in the way, so you want to make sure you re-zip tie them back up in the top. Alright, so I'm going to do that, guys, and then we'll go over a couple more things and we'll be done. Alright guys, as you can see, I got her all put back together now. I'm going to get ready to prep my build plate for my next print. So the first thing I'm going to do is I don't know if it really helps, but in my mind it does. So this is what I've started doing when I do my prep for my build plates. Is I go ahead, because I have my smart LCD, and I know not everybody has one of these and not everybody can do this, but if you have it hooked up to your computer, you should have control over all the motions as well, so you can do this. As I go to move, I move my Z-axis, and basically I'm going to raise it up here a little bit. What I want to do is I want to raise it up. I know I can't get it completely all the way up in here, but I want to get these bars as close to up here as I can without actually taking it too high. So we're going to take it up to right about there. Okay? So as you can see, my bars are almost completely hidden behind the shroud now, behind the casing. Alright, the next thing I do is I have my spray shields. I'll put a link in the description down below if you want to print your own. The guy that made these models, these are great. They work wonderful. They do a good job. I put these in here, like so. Now, you can leave this down behind here, but I think that's what got everything all sticky over here from the mist going just over the edge of these shields. So I like to put it up here. Almost out of hairspray. Get my hairspray, shake it up well. I always want to shake your hairspray well before you put it down. Alright, and then I'm just going to apply my hairspray. And I want to try and keep the fog it creates from going up in there. You can't 100%, but you can try and keep some of it from going up in there. And for anybody who cares, this is the hairspray I use. Alright, I'll pull my shields out. I'll come back in here to prepare, move access, 1mm, Z, and wind it back down here a little bit. I usually like to get it before I start heating it up about 2 or 3 inches above the build plate, somewhere in there, maybe 4 sometimes, anywhere from 2 to 4 inches I guess would be the best way to put it. Somewhere right about in there. Alright, and then I just push the build plate back, and now I like to let mine sit for about 10 or 15 minutes and let it naturally dry. You can turn on the heated bed and dry it faster. I think it works better if you let it naturally dry and then heat up the bed. To me, I feel like it works better, but if I am in a hurry, I'll spray it on there, turn the bed on, heat it up, let it evaporate off. I just feel it does a better job if you let it sit and dry on its own. Alright guys, there you go. Well, we've done our maintenance. This is simple maintenance. This was nothing over the top. This wasn't pulling boards out and replacing motors or anything like that. This was just simple maintenance on it. We solved an issue we were having with the auto level. Alright guys, thank y'all for watching. If you like what you saw, please like and subscribe. Please leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, have a great day. And for those of you that have been watching me for a while, you know that I've been building a house. It's been being built roughly for about the past 5 months now. The house is finally finished. I'm supposed to close on it Friday. So that means as far as big episodes go, I'm going to try and get 1 or 2 more that I almost have everything done for, recorded and edited and ready to go. So hopefully I'll have those for the next 2 Mondays. If not both of them, at least one of them. After that, we're going to do some quick prints. It's going to be 2-3 weeks before I'm going to be able to make any more content because, well, I'm going to have to tear everything down again. I'm going to have to set up my entire makerspace at the new house. I've also got to do I'm also going to put in a fence in the backyard in the new house because I've got a dog and she needs a place to run around. So it's going to take a little while to get everything up and going. So I'm going to take care of that. I'm going to try and get as much done as I can before I close on Friday. So hopefully I'll have enough videos to give y'all something to watch on, like I normally do, on Monday and Wednesday. You may get a couple quick print videos on Mondays and then on Wednesdays before I actually get back into full-size episodes again. So guys, thank y'all for watching. I'll catch y'all when I get in the new house. Talk to y'all later.